So today we are continuing our series of diving deep into the divine union of the masculine and feminine. And today we are talking about giving and receiving. So why do we want to talk about this? Why is this specifically interesting on our path, on our spiritual path in our life? So if you imagine two beings, like just two energy beings on the earth, right? Like we can imagine the oneness of the universe, like that we are all God, we are all part of divine creation, we are all this one great energy. But if we actually split apart into duality so that we can experience each other, now let's imagine we're just two beings. It doesn't matter about gender or age or anything like that, just two beings on planet Earth. How do they connect with each other? Right? This is what the union of the masculine and feminine is about. Masculine and feminine just being, imagine positive or negative, yin and yang. None of these are quite right, but imagine just universal energies of how two beings interact. So these two beings interact. How do they do it? Well, maybe this one goes over and it touches this one. Now it's interacting, right? Over here, they're not interacting, but it touches the other one. Whoever is the one touching is the one giving, and whoever is being touched is receiving. So the giving, the one that is doing, this is the masculine energy in the universe, not gender. This is just that energy of giving to another being. And now a connection is made, and potentially more is possible once that connection is made. This is one of the primary ways we interact with each other. Now that's physical touch. It also could be speaking, right? Making a sound. And the one speaking it's like the energy is coming out. It could be a bird singing, right? A bird sings and it sends a vibration towards the other. This person receives that vibration through their eardrum, and they receive the sound of the bird. The bird is in the masculine, and we are in the feminine, receiving the sound of the bird, right? If we hear the wind is the movement, and this is creating a vibration, and we are hearing it through our senses. We are feeling it on our face, right? We may even see the reactions. We are receiving that energy coming towards us. So this is a primary way that we interact with each other, with the world around us, and within. But we're going to talk more about relating with other people today. That's our primary focus, because that's our primary experience, right? This is important to talk about because it's not only the primary way we interact with each other, but it's almost also the primary way that we become separate from each other, that we hurt each other, that we drive each other apart, right? And this comes back to, I'm going to review a little bit, this comes back to the idea that we have been living within this separation paradigm for a couple millennia at least, where it's completely normal to be completely separate. So then in that paradigm, what does giving and receiving look like? I want to give something to you, but I'm not actually emotionally connected to you. I'm not activating the fact that I really love you. I really care about you. I'm not going to think about that right now. But for some reason, I want to give something to you. Maybe I want to give you advice, because I've been watching you, and I've simplified your life to the point that I think I can give you some pretty good advice, and that's going to make me feel really good about myself, because it makes me feel smart, right? Because I have self-worth issues, which we all do. This isn't like a painting the bad character thing. We've all been raised in this curious paradigm to kind of feel badly about ourselves. So we do all kinds of crazy things to make ourselves feel good, like I'm going to give you advice. I'm not connecting to this person. I'm not wondering if they're needing advice or wanting advice or desiring it in any way, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to tell you all the things that I think about you and what you should be doing. So I am giving. But is it creating connection? No, it's actually pushing us further apart. If you imagine those two people taking a step backwards, at least the one, air quote, receiving is going to energetically take a step backwards because they don't want what's being given to them. And because of this normalcy of being separate, that's what a lot of our giving and receiving looks like. Because we'll still have the dynamic. The question is it in separation or is it in loving connection? Because if you were actually connected to someone, and if you were actually connected to them, you wouldn't necessarily give them unsolicited advice. You're not going to beat them down anymore because you're not going to be able to tell yourself, well, it's for their own good. And they need to know this because you would be in your heart feeling how lost they are right now, but also deeply feeling how they want to feel strong. They want to be better. They're trying as hard as they can. The last thing they need is someone coming in and saying, here, I'll help. I'm the smart one. My life's all together. I've got all the answers for you. This is very unkind. And yet it's so normalized that we actually think it's being kind, or it's what love does. It's what we do as parents. It's what we do as a friend. You know what? I'm a real friend. I'm going to tell you exactly. We've actually normalized this kind of unsolicited giving as being love, which makes sense, right? Because after a couple millennia of living in separation, and we want love of some flavor, we're just going to call anything we want love. We're going to call abuse love. We're going to call, giving things that people don't want love. We're going to call anything love, even though it's not love at all. So this is really, really important. And the other part about why we should talk about this is the other part of this background is that we've also lived in a domination paradigm. Not just separate, but because separate, if you assume we're kind of just apart and not paying attention to each other. We actually are separate, and there is a desire for domination over other. And realize that I don't mean that every person here wants to dominate other people. We've lived in a paradigm where there are those who thrive on power, money, control, land, whatever that is. And because we've all lived within this, sometimes we've internalized that desire for power because of all the authority that we've had to battle against because of that. And then we perpetuate that onto other people, and we do it to our kids because it was done to us as children. Or we do it to other people because that's what our teachers did to us, and they forced us to learn things we didn't want to do, so we force other people to do things we don't want to do. So it's sort of, we have to become extremely conscious to actually get rid of that domination pattern within us. And on the flip side, most of us, because we've lived in this, have the other side of that we've been dominated. Maybe we've been controlled or abused, or simply, I don't even want to say maybe. I've never met anyone that hasn't been in that position. So then what happens? We're afraid to be dominated. We're afraid to be the one without power. So suddenly we have all of this energy pushing against. And we're like, you know what? No one's ever going to control me. And we put the walls up. The separation increases even more. And sometimes we just isolate because I don't care. I would rather be alone than to deal with your nonsense. I would rather be alone than have to put up with you trying to control me all the time. So energetically, emotionally, we contract and we say, you know what? I'll just figure it out myself. I'm going to do it all myself. I don't care. I don't care about your opinion. I don't want your help. I don't want your money. I don't want anything. Just leave me alone. This can happen when we're 4 years old. This can happen when we're 14. This can happen at any time in our life where we finally just are like, you know what? The world is not safe to be oppressed like this, and I'm going to become strong by myself. But the challenge with that is that we end up living as islands. We end up living alone. We end up living, even if we are with people, even if we've been married for 40 years, we end up energetically being alone because we don't ask for help. We don't honor our truth. We don't receive the gifts that people even give to us. You know? There was a man that I worked with for a while in Europe, and he was a really lovely man, and I was helping him with some sexual issues that he had, and he had this huge heart. Like, he was such a giver. He was that guy, and he was a genuinely nice person, like a really genuinely nice person. He didn't have any of the giving twists that we're going to talk about today. He was a genuinely kind person. He worked with kids who were living in the street. Like, he was just a lovely, lovely man. But he had been raised in a really difficult part of town. You know, a lot of abuse, a lot of alcoholism. And he had learned at a young age, receiving was dangerous. You know, the likelihood is if you did receive something, it would be painful, right? And you don't want that. And at a very young age, he just put a block up to receiving anything. And of course, there was all kinds of self-worth stuff there too, because he'd had a lot of things said to him by people who were drunk, parents, family at a young age, saying that he's not worthy. He's just a piece of nothing. So fast forward, he's in his 60s, he's working with me, and he's trying to work through some issues in intimacy. And he actually is unable to receive even a compliment, because he actually did really good work in the community, and people would come up to him and say, wow, that was really amazing. He'd say, oh no, anyone could do it. You know, anyone. I mean, anyone would have done it. It doesn't have to be me. His kids would say, Dad, you're an amazing person. Or they wouldn't say that. They'd say, thank you so much for your help. Like, that really was awesome. He'd say, oh, well, of course. I mean, but he would blow it off every time. We have to be able to receive. And it's a real question. And so it's a very interesting part of our spiritual journey. If we struggle to receive, if we struggle to receive a compliment, if we struggle to receive help, if we struggle to receive touch, all of these things are important. They're not small. And they're worth a deeper dive into our psyche. They're worth a bit of an investigation to say, what is that about? Because if I can't receive, the energy isn't flowing, right? Even if I'm giving, if I'm not receiving, it's a complete outward dump, and I'm never receiving. And again, this isn't like an even Steven thing, which we'll talk about, that you have to, expect it back if you give it out. But we have to be able to receive in other ways. In the same way, you don't want to always be receiving. Like, I'm so needy. I'm a never-ending thing. Like, I just have to receive and receive and receive, and I just never give, right? That also is a problem that we're going to talk about. So, because sometimes we have as many fears about giving as we do about receiving, and we have as many hang-ups. So, whichever side you fall on, or maybe both sometimes, it's a really worthy deep dive into, wow, where did that come from? Is that a patterning I learned from my family? Is that a singular experience I had in my past that soured me from ever giving again in that way, or ever opening myself to receive in that way? Sometimes you can have a relationship. There can be one experience in it, and you'll never open that door again. One experience with one person on a particular crappy day, and you never open yourself to receive ever again. This is really important to look at, because life is about this masculine-feminine flow. So this is what we're going to talk about. So let's think about all the different ways we can give and receive. So the first one we talked about was this touching someone. Could be touching a friend, could be a hug, could be holding a child, could be touching in intimacy, it could be all kinds of touch. It could be shaking hands, it could be all kinds of things. Speaking and receiving, speaking and listening. We're going to talk more about that next week. That's actually our focus in next week's talk, but that's also a huge dynamic. Sharing what we have with others is a giving and receiving. Helping is giving and receiving. But where does this go awry? Touching. How often have we been handled in rough ways? How often have we been touched in ways that we didn't want? How often have we been touched in ways that the intention is to control us? So all of a sudden, we'll start to either believe that that's what touch is about, or we actually start to not want any touch at all because it's hurt in the past, or I don't want to be controlled in that way, right? So touching is a very interesting thing in the ways that it can go awry. Sharing with others. In a separation or a domination paradigm, this can be a control question. Well, I gave you all of this, so a little appreciation wouldn't be bad coming my way, and maybe you could do this and this for me. It's actually a control thing. It's not giving out of the generosity of our heart. It's a control thing. It's an ego thing, right? And of course, so on the flip side, no one wants to receive from you, or everyone's afraid to receive because we know that, yeah, but if I receive that, I'm going to have an unpaid debt with you that you get to decide later how I have to repay it. And the guilt inside of me will make me do it, and I'll end up doing things I don't want to do. So you know what? You just keep your help. I don't really want it. Sometimes even helping, we've been trained about the obligation of charity. So I helped you. I didn't want to help you. I just have to help you because that's how I was raised, and I see a need and I've got to help because that's what maybe my family said or the church said or society said. So you know what? Just appreciate it. I don't want to be here either. Look, how awful is that? Right? And how often we end up helping each other with that kind of attitude. Right? That's not giving and receiving. That's, again, some kind of weird thing we're doing to make ourselves feel better. It's some kind of, I don't know. It's terrible. It feels awful, right? So instead, so those are kind of the crappy things. And we're going to talk a bit more about that, unfortunately. But imagine instead that the energy of giving and receiving is like electrical energy flowing down a wire. Positive electrical energy wants to flow to the negative pole. That's why you have to have a ground in a circuit, because it won't flow unless there's somewhere for it to go. The positive energy has to flow towards negative energy, right? This is the energy of giving and receiving. There is a need, and I fill it. And I fill it. And that's it. It's over. There's no reciprocity. There's no nothing. It's just, I'm just flowing to that. And so throughout our conversation, it's a very interesting thing to ponder. If as you're talking, you think, yeah, but it has to circle back, right? That's an important thing to ask ourselves, because that's part of our training, right? There's this idea that we call even Steven, right? That I give this to you, you give this to me, and now we're even, right? We're even Steven. This is not giving and receiving. Even Steven came from a financial world, right? It came from, not really financial, it came from retail and the market, where I've given you this thing and you give me a chicken, right? This is an even exchange of goods. We're even Steven. if I am playing tennis with you and our scores are even, we're even, Steven, right? This is actually where that came from. But it has seeped into our lives where suddenly, if I help you move, you owe me, and then we'll be even. Or if I do this thing for you, if I cook you dinner, well, now you've got to cook dinner for me, and now we're even. And realize this is so insidious. Like, this is really, really insidious. Like, last weekend, my partner gave me a beautiful massage, a beautiful Kashmiri tantric massage that he had learned at the Tantra Festival. 2 hours of this epic, beautiful massage. I couldn't, like the next day, I woke up the next morning and my body was just like limp. Like I was just like butter, And that program still was running inside of me. Like, well, maybe next weekend I'll do this for him. That's not why he did it. Right? And you can hear all the arguments. Well, that's only nice. And well, you probably want to do it anyway. And it'd be nice for him to do it. But then I don't get to fully receive it. And the weird thing is, it takes away from his joy of giving it to me. Why not let him enjoy this gift? And we talked about this. We talked about this even Steven thing and this training of reciprocity, right? Because it gets in the way of the union of giving and receiving. And I know this is a really bizarre thing. And like I said, we're so steeped in it, it's really hard to tease it out. But there is so much joy. Him giving it to me and me receiving it created a union. It created a connection, a deep bond. That's the joy. That was the goal. The goal was the connection. The goal was the experience of the giving and receiving. Whether he was giving or receiving is irrelevant. The thrill happened and the experience is complete. But this is where something gets amok. And this is part of the whole patriarchal mindset. And again, not men. This domination of the masculine energy in the planet, in the world, this need to overpower. The weird thing about that is that in many ways, we only value the masculine side of that interaction. Because he was in the masculine. That's what has to get paid back. Because we value the masculine side of everything because of our training. Can you imagine instead of him saying, thank you so much for letting me do this? Like, thank you so much for being so vulnerable, for allowing me to experience you this way. Thank you so much for surrendering to me, to letting me do this and allowing this energy of love to flow through me and out my hands into you. Like, thank you so much. I can't believe I'm allowed to do this, that I'm blessed to get to do this with you. Like, imagine if we honored the feminine like that. Would I have any desire to then say, oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do it to you now. It's like, no. There is such joy in it. There is such bliss on both sides, and all that bliss rolls together into union. And this is new for a lot of us, to actually just swim in that happiness and not flip into the even Steven, not flip into that. So I have an online Tantra course that's been running for probably 10 years now. And the second week, we look at touch. And of course, what's interesting is the course is called a Foundations for Tantric Intimacy. What does that mean? We're creating a new foundation for what's possible between two people. And in the touch module, the exercise is, if you're in a couple, there's an individual, but if you're in a couple, one person lays down and they have to be in the feminine. One person is in the masculine and they're the givers. This exercise, as simple as it may seem, that the giver has to touch the feminine and the receiver has to receive the touch, it sounds so simple, but it is actually difficult and profoundly healing for both people. Because all of a sudden, now imagine you're the receiver, and you may be really good at receiving. You may have received wonderful touch in your life, and you just become a sponge, and it's easy peasy. And if that's you, I want you to imagine someone you know who struggles to receive touch, or struggles to receive anything, help, anything, right? So that person is now lying on the bed, and their partner or a friend or anyone is going to be the giver. So you have a conversation like, I'm going to start touching you here. Is that okay? Sure. That person receiving inevitably tenses up, right? They don't know where the touch is going to go. Maybe they are normally in control of things. They don't let other people figure it out. They okay, here, touch me here, then touch me here. No, that's too hard, that's too soft, then do this, then do that. They have to actually surrender to the giver, assuming they trust the giver, right? But this can even be in long-term marriages. That there are such patterns of touching and receiving that maybe haven't really been enjoyed for all those decades. So all of a sudden, maybe the giver is going to touch them sexually. And they're instantly tensing. Because they think, oh, well, now they're just going to want sex. Well, now they're just doing this because there's all these strings attached to the touch. And all those strings are now rising in consciousness, right? They're all rising up and, oh, they're going to touch me here, so then this is going to have to happen. Or they're going to touch me here, and this isn't going to happen. Maybe someone's struggling with erectile dysfunction or something, and they're going to touch me there and nothing's going to happen. And then they're going to be disappointed. And then and all this stuff is going to come rising up, all this emotional stuff. Or maybe you've been traumatized through touch, right? Through rough handling or abuse. So the idea of being touched with your arms at your side and just surrendering is terrifying. It's terrifying. Think of the healing journey. Because imagine if that's how you are in your skin, this is our physical manifestation. That is how we are emotionally. That is how we are spiritually. That is the effect. That's how much we can even connect with the world around us. Right? It's just us. We are the common denominator everywhere we go. Right? We're the common factor. So now all of a sudden the person is touching us and we're like, maybe we're feeling sad, maybe we're feeling this, maybe we're feeling that. It's a huge healing process to allow ourselves to be touched with no reciprocity required, no even Steven, no strings attached, just the act of receiving. So then you have the giver. And now the giver is now having to be responsible. They're not allowed to just touch you any way they want. They don't get to touch you because they're horny, or they don't get to touch you because they just want to touch you this way, or they want the exercise to be over soon because they don't really want to be doing this dumb course anyway, or whatever. Their partner has agreed to surrender and experience the touch. So now all of a sudden the giver has to be conscious, and they have to bring a meditative mind in, which just means they're present and connected. Now all of a sudden, maybe they think, well, I'll just start on the shoulders, I'll start at the top. But they have to listen inside and say, oh, okay, maybe the feet. I'll go to the feet first. So now all of a sudden the giver has a job to do, a connected job. And the giver actually gives in a way, and the receiver says, oh wow, I'm inside. They say, oh yeah, feet, that's better. Okay, I can do feet. And then the giver stays in communion with the receiver and continues to give. Well, how many people might say, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to read someone like that. I'm not an intuitive. I don't know anything about massage. I don't know anything, like, how am I supposed to do that? It almost feels like too much responsibility. Like, how am I supposed to do that? But then when you think of that, well, then how were you touching them before? Like, if you weren't connected to them, what was the last 40 years about? Or whatever, right? This ability to give in a way that we are actually connected to the receiver is the whole point. It's the whole point of even being alive. It's the whole point of these two beings standing in space, that we only give to someone else what they desire. Ever. If we struggle to connect with another person in a way that will allow us to even know what they desire, then that's the journey. The journey is, why am I not able to emotionally connect with this person? Right? Why can I not feel them? Why am I not attuned to them? It was really interesting. There was an article flowing around Facebook, and it was about the difference about consent. Because in the Tantra world, the Neo-Tantra world, consent's a huge deal, right? We talk about this a lot. Consent. Only touching people when they want to be touched. Like, just to really understand how deeply our dysfunctional programming has been, that we have to teach consent. Like, this is really important. That we have to teach that I don't have to let you touch me if I don't want you to. And the person giving, if they say no, no is the answer. Like, this is taught in every Neo-Tantra workshop. It's taught in counseling. It's going mainstream. But we have to learn it. Right? But it is such a thing. There was another thing, the funny thing, I'm not really that into social media, which is a lie. I like social media, but I understand the downfalls of it. But interesting things do pop up every so often. There was a story that a woman was telling about her and her daughter. Her daughter was 3 years old. And they had gone to visit her mom and stepdad. And the stepdad was like, to the little girl, "Oh, come and sit on Grandpa's knee." And the little girl was like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm just gonna, and he goes, "Get over here, come on, get over here." And so she kind of looks at her mom, and she kind of goes over and crawls up, and he started kind of touching her hair, and she's like kind of doing this, and the mother's like, don't touch her like that. And "Oh, for God's sake, she's fine, she's okay." And she's like, "No." And the little girl is cringing like this. This was definitely when I was growing up, this is how it was. This is why we have to teach consent. Right? A lot of us were taught that we had no rights to say no, even in school. You have to do this, and then you have to do this, and your opinion doesn't matter. So giving and receiving is tricky. It's a much slower, deeper process than we think, because it's hard to receive if we've not had consent in our life. And even sometimes in families, if we say no, suddenly we're being difficult. "Why are you causing so much trouble? This is always the way we've done it. What's the big deal? You're being too sensitive. Just listen. You should listen to my opinion. I've got good thoughts, and I'm older than you. And we know better than you do. And we've been where you are. And what, da, da, da." Like, you can feel this constant, badgering, right? And this is non-consensual touch, non-consensual discussion, non-consensual advice giving, right? Like, these are the things that are amazing to me, that, I really do believe that we are in an ascension. And I know that sounds maybe airy-fairy, but I do believe our consciousness is rising out of something. And for me, in my experience, it's almost like every few weeks, some kind of veil is lifted off of my eyes, and I go, "Well, that's weird." Like this consent thing. do we have to teach consent for? That's crazy. That's crazy. This shouldn't even be a question. You imagine some alien life form coming down and saying, you have to teach what? That's crazy. Think of the idea of learning to honor our inner truth. How many courses have I taught? How many classes have we had here? I named my yoga academy Satya Yoga Academy. Satya, truth. Why? Because we have to do yoga, meditate, learn, discuss our lives, everything, all to simply follow our own truth. That's crazy. Why in the world wouldn't we follow our own truth? Like, what kind of messed up, dysfunctional thing have we been living in for so many generations that we have to take courses in how to listen to our own inner guidance, our own thoughts? So it's a very interesting thing, this giving and receiving. So the last thing I want to talk about is like healthy giving and receiving. We don't want to leave this on a negative note about the crazy world we live in. Although knowing that it's crazy helps us have a healthy witness mind about it all. If we are giving, if we find ourselves either blessed with abundance that we can give to others, or we are asked for help, or we are the ones that get to touch another human, whether it's a friend, a parent, a child, a lover, who knows who in the world, then we have to do it from a place of intuitive joy. And I mean that in that I know I am called to do this right now, which brings me so much joy. That's it. And hopefully it's received. And if it is, awesome, right? That's the complete circle. That's it. I require nothing from anyone else, right? I just want to give this. I want to give you this massage. I would love to make you dinner. I would love to help you, move that bookshelf. I would love to whatever. And that, again, I'm saying this like it's one of those things that's easy if you say it fast. But there's a lot of reasons sometimes that we don't have joy in giving. We've been told that we should give, whether we want to or not. It's the sign of good moral fiber, right? Good people give to others. Good people give to charities. Good people do this. Good people do that. We have to always be giving out of joy. There are charities that I give money to because I really love what these people are doing. And I happily love watching that money leave my bank account every month. I love that. I require nothing back except for knowing that it's going to a good place, right? Because if we have any feelings of obligation, if we find ourselves giving because, well, they did this for me, so I probably should at least make it even, right? Or maybe I only give because I always want to be the one that's giving because it makes me feel good about myself, right? That's a thing, that we're always the one giving. It's just important to look at these things and ask ourselves, wow, where does that come from? Is that training I learned in my family? Is that me afraid to ever be on the receiving end? And receiving, to really feel incredible gratitude when you receive what you desire. And I mean that because a lot of times people will say, oh, well, I'm terrible at receiving. And the truth is, we're not terrible at receiving. We're terrible at receiving things we don't want. Well, I'm terrible at taking other people's advice. Well, it's because you didn't want it. And I'm terrible. That person, they always want to have sex or something, or my partner, or my husband, or my wife, and I don't really want it, but I'm not really good at receiving when they touch me. It's like, because maybe you don't like the touch. Or maybe there's other issues at play here, and this is not the way you want to receive, or whatever. You know? But when we receive something, if someone's giving us something that we actually desire and we're struggling to receive it, that's the interesting point. That's the place of growth. That's the part of our spiritual path where we say, okay, let's dig deeper into this, because I should be able to receive this beautiful light energy coming into my being, right? In the form of help, in the form of food, in the form of gifts, in the form of whatever, of the form of touch. Why can't I do it? It's a really important place where we stop and now dive deep. We don't continue going forward. Now we go down the rabbit hole, you know. The other part about being a receiver is that receiving is normal. And I don't mean being an eternal receiver. Like I've talked a lot about the whole, there was a great book called Givers and Takers, or Give and Take by Adam Grant. And it's a great book. If you struggle with people pleasing or anything like that, I highly recommend it. And he talks about how there are people in the world who are takers. And this isn't receiving. This is just taking and taking and taking, almost like a parasite. And you give and you give and you give, whether you like it or not. And eventually you get burned out of giving. And that's not the receiving I'm talking about. I'm talking about, I actually really need help. And asking for help. Because the problem with this weird patriarchal domination paradigm is we also have this idea in our head that only being masculine is strong and the feminine is weak. So needing help means I'm weak. Needing help means I'm less than. Right? If we think this in any way, we are in trouble. And we are going to end up separated from other people. So to just be really, really clear that needing help is not a weakness. It's just a state at this moment in time. And I'll tell you, it's like, this is silly, but I want to move my apartment around for reasons I'll probably tell you guys later. But I want to move my apartment around. Could I do it by myself? Could I lift everything around? Blah, blah, blah? Probably. It wouldn't be a lot of fun, but I could. Or I could invite my kids over and we could do it, and that'd be fun. Right? It'd be fun to do it together. What else do we do together? We can do stuff together, and then it's fun, and then we order pizza or something. You know? It's fun. But as long as I think that because I'm asking for help, I am needy or weak, or I'm putting people in positions where they're going to feel obligated and all this stuff, well, I'll just stay an island, right? I'll just suffer through myself. Maybe I won't even bother doing it, right? Being in the feminine, receiving, is not a weakness. It's beautiful. It's just a part of the whole. So it's just really important to look at that and look at the joy in receiving and the joy of giving. And then all of a sudden, all this craziness, the strings attached, the even Steven, the requirement for reciprocity, all these things all just disappear. Because everyone's giving in joy, everyone's receiving in joy, creating all these beautiful connections. And life's just easy, right? What happens if the giver feels uncomfortable touching certain places and the receiver desires it? For example, erotic areas that feel loaded with expectations. So, everything is done in love, right? If I am receiving a massage and I'm connecting to the person who's giving and they are uncomfortable doing something, why would I ask them to do something that they're uncomfortable doing? Right? If I'm connected to them, we are connected to each other. I would never ask someone to do something they're not comfortable doing. Is that a form of abuse where a person is asked to do something they're not willing to do? Well, it's only abuse when they're forced to do it, right? I've had lots of people ask me, like especially say if you're talking like in a sexual relationship, do you want to do this? And if I am honest and I'm say, actually, no, I'm not really into that. That's the end. Like there's no more. If then there's sort of this, oh, come on, what's wrong with you? If there's some kind of shaming or some kind of whatever, or, gaslighting, right? How easily are we gaslighted? Oh, is it because of stuff that happened in your childhood? Oh, is it because of your religious upbringing? It's like, no, I just don't want to. And that's it. Like, that's just it. And if that means that someone that you're not sexually compatible, well, then you're not sexually compatible. More discussions are needed. Right? But it's to always be denying ourselves because of someone else's reality. Like, this is the curiosity about this whole gaslighting and stuff, which is a huge part of our society. That here's my reality, and this is what needs to happen in the bedroom. Well, I'm not really into parts of that. Well, there's something wrong with you then. Well, no, I'm just not. Well, obviously there's something wrong with you. My reality is the only reality that we should live in. Like, we don't even recognize that another person just has another soul's path. And this comes down to love, right? This is why in my book, Tantric Intimacy, the whole first section is about redefining love, and specifically agape. Because agape is kindness and genuine love for another person, genuine connection and respect for them. That is at the foundation of all of this. We should never, ever even want someone to do something outside of their truth. And as soon as we want someone to do something that goes against their truth, there is no agape. There is no actual love. There is no actual kindness. Just really important to ponder, right? In what you shared, I see parallels with a dominant position with my sister who wishes to control what is happening in terms of our relationship. I feel a common issue with my sister and my husband. I want the paradigm to shift as I resist the control of having to receive in the way it's wanting to be given. When again, control is something completely different. Some people, I often teach about how in intimate relationships or even family relationships, we often do prefer the masculine or feminine role, just in that erotic part, not in the rest of our life. And some people are like, no way, I'm not going to be in the feminine. I don't want to be in the feminine, or I'm not going to be in the masculine. And oftentimes the one that says, I'm not going to be in the feminine, I like being in the masculine, they're not actually liking to be in the masculine. They don't like being in the giving role or all that. They just want to be in control. They just want to have the power. And wanting the power is very different, right? And so if your sister and your husband, they just want power, you're not receiving anything. You're just a pawn in their scheme. And of course you don't want to be a pawn, because you're an intelligent woman with thoughts and spiritual perceptions of things. So it's not a case of you're not receiving. You just want to actually be playing in the arena. You want to have respect. You want to have that agape. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day.